Welcome to the Youth Voice, a politics podcast giving young people a voice in politics across the island of Ireland. Today we're joined by MP for Foyle as well as SDLP leader Colum Eastwood. So thanks for coming on, Colum.
No problem.
So
Glad to do it.
I suppose we'll just get straight in. With the current Brexit situation, it's an absolute mess. There is both sides are kind of unhappy, both whether you're unionist or nationalist, Remainer or Brexiteer. It seems with issues like the Northern Ireland Protocol, people are really tense. The situation is a mess at the moment. What do you think, Colin, is the best way to, I suppose, address the current situation in regards to getting a hold of the kind of tensions and calming things down at the moment?
Well, I think the first thing to do is to tell the truth, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. Particularly within unionist leaders are putting out this notion that this is all the protocol's fault. Well, in fact, actually, any disruption that we're seeing is a result of Brexit and the hard Brexit that was chosen by, of course, the DUP and the British government. So, in other words, when England, Scotland, and Wales left the customs union and single market, there had to be checks somewhere because we have a land border with the Republic of Ireland. Therefore, we have a land border with the European Union. It would be utterly impossible, in fact, to do the land border or to do the checks in Ireland on the border because there's 300 crossings. It just wouldn't be possible. So those checks had to go somewhere, and they're now in the ports. Now, can we resolve a lot of the issues around it? Yes, we absolutely can. But I think for the DUP and others to pretend that the protocol can be scrapped, it can be put in the bin, and we can all move on, it doesn't solve the problem. We will still have the issue of where do the checks go. And again, we know they can't go on the land border, so they'd have to go on the port. So it doesn't solve anything. And actually, because the DUP and the Austrians at times, and Jim Allister have told people that this will all be fine, that Brexit will be great, we're all going to have a wonderful time trading with the rest of the world. And frankly, didn't tell the truth about what the implications of that would be for disruption to trade here and for us having a border in the Irish Sea. Well, that's their fault, and I want to solve it. I want to work with them. We're happy to do that. But they need to dial down the rhetoric and stop pretending to people that there's a magic solution here. There just isn't. I mean, we can smooth out the issues. We can solve the problems. But there will be, there are changes now because Britain has decided against people like my wishes. I campaigned, voted, argued constantly against Brexit. Of course, the DUP and Jim Allister argued for it. There are going to be changes. There are also going to be big opportunities because we will now be in a unique position where we can trade freely with Britain. We can, export freely to Britain and to the European Union, and nobody else can do that, on these islands. So I think there's been a huge mistake made by unionism, and I would encourage them to dial down their rhetoric, to step back and to think calmly about how we solve the problems. And we're ready and willing to work with them. We've already solved some of them. We can solve more.
Absolutely. I think that, and I know from listening to the radio and hearing different politicians, this kind of rhetoric, it has really stirred things up. Like, it's almost, as somebody who didn't grow up during the Troubles, I'm, I suppose, a child of the peace process. I've known nothing but peace. It's almost intimidating, this kind of the attacks on offices and the bomb hoaxes. It's not something that my generation's used to. So do you think there is, like, people are talking now, especially I think heard in Nolan Live, almost this potential for violence? Do you think there is, or do you think it's almost just kind of stirred up rubbish?
Well, there's always potential for violence, and I think our politicians' words have consequences and can have dangerous consequences at times. But it is important not to overplay it. We know that the threats on port workers, we've been told by the police that they aren't serious. They aren't being run by paramilitaries. So we have to do everything we can to protect those workers. But we also have to put it into perspective. I mean, people writing a slogan on a wall is not, wouldn't be considered a serious threat in my view. So we have to get back to calm heads dealing with the situation. I mean, of course, there are major issues for some businesses. It is really difficult. We accept that. But it's a consequence of Brexit, not the protocol. And I just think we need to calm down and try and solve some of the issues. We already have. We solved the issue around steel. We solved the issue around second-hand cars. So we can solve any of the other ones, but we won't solve everything because we're in a different trading relationship now, a different trading bloc than Britain, and that we didn't want that, but that's the choice of the people of Britain, and of course there's a consequence for all of us in that.
Brilliant. I suppose one of the, in some people's eyes, a more positive aspect of Brexit is a rise in support for a kind of United Ireland and support for a border poll. And with polls now coming out and saying 51% of people want the referendum, do you think it's time to start really moving towards that kind of United Ireland preparation, the getting ready for a border poll and getting that kind of getting into gear for it?
Well, I've already said, and I think as a result of Brexit and a number of other things, particularly this Tory government, I think the UK is ending. And I don't say that to rub my unionist neighbours' noses in it or anything. I just genuinely believe that's where we're going. If you step back and look at Scotland, if you look at the implications here, I think we are moving in that direction. That places a huge onus on those of us who want to see change to plan for it and to assure our friends and neighbours who disagree with that we will respect and celebrate their culture, that it will be a key part of any new Ireland, and that we're not going to try to right old wrongs or fight old battles, that we're going to build a vision for a new country and a new society that everyone can feel part of. And that's a huge challenge, and it means that we shouldn't be constantly celebrating and glorifying the past. It means that we should be talking about the future, and I firmly believe young people will decide this, and they will be key in determining what this looks like. So the SDLP in the next couple of weeks will be launching our New Ireland Commission. We've already begun the work of speaking to people from a unionist background in particular, but we will do that hard slog of policy work to tell us what the economy will look like, the health service will look like, and all of those aspects of it. And we just believe you have to get on with the job of preparing, because of course it's in the British government's gift to call a border poll, and they could call it at any moment. They could bounce us. That would be divisive. Planning for it and getting ready for it isn't divisive if you do it properly. So it's a huge opportunity to build a new society and to try and free us from the shackles of our past. And if we put young people at the centre of that vision, then that will be something that I think will be very, very attractive, because I just think young people in particular are very angry that they've been dragged out of the European Union, and they want a route back. And it's not just about the structures of the European Union, it's about that idea that we're part of a global world, a liberal, progressive society, and that we're not going to be run at the whim of English nationalism in the British Tory party.
Absolutely. I know I come from a nationalist background, but I do try and talk to as many different, I suppose, sides of the community. But I think something that is kind of the general consensus is, if we do go about it and we are just kind of, all right, there, have your border poll, go sort it out, campaign as you want. I think no matter whether we win or lose, whether it's unity, whether it's we're staying in the UK, I think if it isn't a situation where we know exactly what we're getting into, if we go about it the way Brexit did, we're going to have a mess. There's a much better chance of violence. There's a much better chance of people saying that they don't want it, and then we'll end up in another Brexit situation. And I know I certainly don't want that, and I think a lot of young people especially have said, if we're going to have one, we have to know exactly what we're getting into, and we have to know how we're transitioning.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right about Brexit. I mean, people didn't know what they were voting for. And the other thing is, I want to win as well. And I only want to do this once. I don't want to be fighting this battle over and over and over again. And I think if we view it as building a society, a new country, and a new nation that is very welcoming and open, that has the principles of the Good Friday Agreement enshrined in it, then that's how you win a referendum. The referendum ends up being kind of consequential. You just have to get as much buy-in as possible. Then the referendum is actually the easy bit, but you have to set it out very, very clearly. So nationalism, or people who believe in change, New Irelanders, won't put out a vision and a prospectus for what that will look like. And unionism should do the same. And I think in a democratic discussion, free from rancor and anger and violence, and we can have a debate. I think we'll win that debate, but in time. But we have to get on with doing the work, and that's what we're engaged in now.
Absolutely. do you think, and I suppose this will finish off the United Ireland conversation, but do you think that we're, I suppose, as a society, we're ready for that kind of that conversation? I know that we're in the middle of a pandemic, but in, I suppose, a post-pandemic situation, do you think that's something that, as a society, the North and the South and Britain is kind of ready to make that next step to the, I suppose, the end goal of nationalism?
Well, yes, it's kind of nationalism or the places all. Everyone's been talking about this for 100 years. Um, we have bedded in peace, as difficult as that is. But the Good Friday Agreement was about allowing us to achieve our aims democratically, to make a case, to win or lose, and then to get on with governing and working together. But it has to be based on partnership and reconciliation and building for the future. And there are very innovative things we can do within a new state that would, I think, make unionism and people from that background, people who feel British, feel part of it and feel a key part of it. So that's the challenge. I think we are ready for it. Whether we're ready for it or not, the conversation's already started. And I sometimes think politicians are last to the table, and we have to recognise that Brexit has changed everything, that the pandemic has actually reminded people of how ludicrous it is to have two different systems on this island. And people are ready to have the conversation. And to be honest, I think we have to have it because the opportunities that exist by doing things better. I think previous generations had the very admirable goal of peace and partnership, and that seemed out of reach at one point. They achieved that. Then next generation bedded in those institutions, and we know how difficult it is, but they're there. Now the responsibility on us is to ask for more, because I don't think it's acceptable that we have the economic inactivity levels that we have, the unemployment levels that we have, the immigration levels that we have, the fact that our health service has got the highest waiting list you can find anywhere. So, I think we should be entitled to expect more and demand more and ask for more and work for more. And that's what we're going to do. And it'll be based, in my view, it should be based on bread and butter issues. Can we make the economy better? Can we make our health service better? Can we make our society more cohesive? And if we do that, and if we focus on that, and if we stop commemorating things that make people, make it difficult for us to reconcile, then I think we can. We can move forward, and we can win this, and we can give my generation, your generation, the generations to come, a different lifestyle, and we shouldn't have to accept second best anymore.
Brilliant. I think, I suppose, actually carrying on kind of from that referendum conversation, something that I suppose most of the main parties in the North have supported is votes at 16. It's something that I'm a big advocate for. I know a lot of youth groups are saying that it's time for it, and it's been brought in Wales, and then in referendums in Scotland they also have it. So I know that the Assembly passed a motion to, I suppose, demand it, I suppose, from Westminster. I know Westminster never actually bothered to bring it about, but is that something that you could see the SDLP or one of the northern parties, I suppose, proposing to Westminster at some point in the near future?
Yeah, I've kind of been supportive of this for a long time, since my actually SDLP youth days, which is longer ago than I'd like to think these days. But absolutely, we will raise it at Westminster. I'm kind of trying to figure out if we already have it. We will, and we'll try and find innovative ways of doing it. The bottom line is we ask 16-year-olds to do all sorts of things. They have a stake in our society. You have to have some sort of lower limit. But 16-year-olds, as far as I'm concerned, can work. They can join an army. They can get in debt. They can do all sorts of things. Why wouldn't we ask them to take part in elections? And I think when you buy people into the political process, the democratic process, they feel like they have more stake in it. And I am sick, frankly, of older people making decisions on behalf of young people. Why would young people not want to take part in the democratic process? I think they would. I was elected, and this is a bit old, but I was elected as a councillor when I was 22 years old. And I was by far, one of the youngest people in there. And it added something, I think, to the council. It added a different dimension because I was in touch, I suppose, with that generation. And I think like we can only benefit from it. I mean, let's be honest, previous generations haven't done a great job in the North of bringing people together and changing society. So we have a responsibility to try to maybe, get some of that thinking that is less burdened by the past into the political process, the democratic process, and 100% behind it. And anything we can do to try to make it happen, we absolutely will.
Ah, brilliant. I think that kind of leads me on to my next question as well. A lot of young people are kind of almost disenfranchised with politics. There is the kind of idea that Stormont and Westminster and all of the kind of democratic institutions, they're run by kind of old men. And the young people, a lot of young people I know from talking to them have said, we don't feel represented. We don't, because we don't have a vote, we don't really have that much of a voice. I know that's something that I'm trying to change, obviously. But I think a lot of people just they don't feel looked after almost by politicians. So how do we, I suppose, challenge that and deal with that and get more young people into the conversation and I suppose make people feel like they actually that their vote does matters and what they say it does have an impact.
Yeah, and I totally accept that and get it. I mean, one of the things we're going to do as part of our New Ireland Commission is have a big focus on young people. So we're going to do a lot of outreach work, and we're going to that's going to be run by young people, and try to. I just think it's kind of condescending for me or anybody who's older than me to say this is what young people want. I don't know what young people want, but I want to hear. I want to find out, and I want to then try and act. And even if I disagree with them, I'll tell them. But I want to know. And also, young people aren't one homogenous group, but I just keep coming back to this thing that if we're determined to change society, we have to listen to people who are less burdened by the past. I mean, I was really heartened to listen to what you said at the start about the fact that you're, some of the things that are happening and at the minute and the tension and how it's kind of frankly a bit scary and how your generation just didn't experience that. Well, I think it's wonderful, let's keep it that way and let's ensure that perspective is, put right into the centre of politics. I think sometimes we're a bit far from violence in a way that we mess about and we think that words don't matter. But I just think we need to remind all politicians that young people are sick of it and fed up with it and want to move on. And I just if you're not involved in the conversation, then we're not going to hear you. So we have to, of course, do whatever we have to do to try to listen and to involve young people. But I also think, and you're a good example of this, but young people shouldn't be afraid of stepping up and stepping forward and recognising that your voice is powerful and will be listened to if you use it properly. So I always say that to young people. I mean, don't wait around for someone to ask, get up on your own 2 feet and start shouting. That's the only way things get done.
And I suppose the world almost is a bit doom and gloom at the minute. The economy's in a mess, Brexit's mental, and the pandemic is it's destroying the world at the moment. But I suppose that is having a massive impact on people's mental health. Everyone's locked up, you can't see people. I know it's taking a toll on me. I know it's taking a toll on a lot of people. If you could, I suppose, kind of address not just the young people, but the people of the north, and kind of say, what would you say to just kind of get people through it, and kind of, what would you advise people to do?
Well, I totally get it. All of us are feeling the effects of this. I mean, we are a community that is used to being out and talking to people and having the crack. And, I miss going to the pub for a pint and I miss seeing my friends and I miss doing all those things. And I think young children in particular, are being affected by this too in ways that maybe we don't understand yet. And older people are stuck in the house, many of them with, seeing relatives at the bottom of the garden if they're lucky. And that's a huge toll on people. But I'm quite hopeful, actually, that we're going to get out of this quicker than we think. I'm very confident in the vaccine programme that is rolling out. It's actually extremely impressive. And, credit to Patricia Donnelly, who's running that, to Michael McBride, the Chief Medical Officer, and to Robin Swan as well for making it happen. And I think, new vaccines coming on board, most vulnerable people getting vaccinated very quickly, will get us back to a level of normality, maybe back to kind of last summer time quickly. And I think it will be quicker than most places. So there is hope. And I also think if we treat this as a wake-up call, people have got a reset and all of that, we need to change what our town centres look like, because that retail thing is probably gone in that way. We need to make them much more environmentally friendly, much more about walking and cycling and bringing people together in different ways. And we need to look at the planet and the impact that we've had on all of that. And I think there is an opportunity now for us all to step back and say, what do we really want? Because things got very fast, for too long, and we destroyed our planet. We destroyed our work-life balance. We worried about stuff that didn't really matter. And I think there's now an opportunity to think differently about all of that. And if we come out of this and go back to living the way we did before, then we've missed a huge opportunity. But if we decide that, just like after the last pandemic in 1917, we can have the roaring 20s, maybe not quite as mad as that, but that we can think differently about getting out and enjoying ourselves and meeting people and remembering that there are people out there who are lonely even outside of a pandemic. And I think asking people if they're okay is always a good start, because we know a lot of people just aren't, and we can help save lives actually by just speaking to people and recognizing people and thinking about them, and just that we reset and rethink about our priorities, think about the work-life balance, allowing people to work from home, encouraging people to work from home if it suits them, encouraging people to have more time with their families. And I think one thing we've realised because of the technology now is that we can actually work and spend time with our families at the same time. Got to a point there where people were working, I know I am, but we still will be after this, but more hours than they were than was really healthy, and there was very little 9 to 5 anymore. That I think we need to get back to a bit of that and allow people to have their families and look at opportunities around 4-day weeks and all of that, and that's the important stuff. And look at once we get through this, the next big challenge is with many challenges here, but it's one thing sorting out our local health service or whatever else, but if we are still continuing to destroy our planet, then none of that will matter. So that's the next big challenge, and I'm very hopeful. We got rid of Donald Trump, thank God. We now have somebody in the White House who's taking the climate crisis seriously. There's a job to be done in Britain, obviously, with that particular government, but I think we need to just take the opportunities and the hope that's there, and there's quite a bit around, and encourage people to step forward, and whether it's involved in politics or whether it's involved in community life, and I think we can get back to a bit more, a bit less of a rat race, a bit more thinking about the planet and thinking about our community and those around us who need help, and that would be a very positive thing. But I genuinely just think we're going to be out of this quicker than we imagine.
Absolutely. I think that's going to wrap us up there. Thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed it. I think you made some really good points there. So thank you so much for coming on. To anyone listening, thank you for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.